8 months ago, 200 people laughed, while my sister stood beneath a 40-foot movie screen with a microphone trapped between both hands. Talia had been smiling when she started her speech. Not a warm smile. The polished one she used on podcast covers and charity flyers, chin tilted just enough to suggest courage without looking proud. Behind her, the gold curtains of the Lyric Theater had opened for what she called a family tribute. The first clip showed Talia at 26 telling a church audience that I had cut her red dress when I was 15. The next showed her on a local morning program saying I had been 17. Then came a podcast interview where she claimed she had watched me slice the fabric with sewing scissors. In another clip, recorded less than a year later, she said she had returned to the dressing room and found the dress ruined after I had already left. The edits were clean and fast. Same solemn expression. Same trembling pause. 4 versions of one memory that could not all be true. Someone near the back laughed first. A surprised bark quickly swallowed. Then another guest chuckled. By the time the screen showed Talia insisting the scissors had been found in my purse, followed by a clip where she swore our mother had pulled them from under a chair, the room broke open. 200 guests laughed. Talia did not. Her smile disappeared, and the microphone lowered an inch. Across the reception floor, my mother grabbed my father's wrist. They did not look at the screen. They looked toward the side exit. That was when I knew they understood what was coming next. My mother stopped, turned away from the exit, and reached for Talia's microphone. Before I take you back to the week when I learned what my family had planned, I hope you're doing well wherever you're listening from. Stay with me, because the truth behind that screen took 22 years to surface, and please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happened when my mother tried to stop the video. 7 days earlier, the Lyric smelled of old velvet, fresh sawdust, and the lemon oil the restoration crew used on the brass railings. Evan stood in the center aisle, while a low note rolled from the stage speakers and trembled through the empty seats. "Left channel is clean," he called, one hand cupped behind his ear. "Run the center again." A technician in the projection booth sent another tone through the room. It vibrated under my shoes and faded into the high-painted ceiling, where plaster stars had been repaired one at a time after decades of water damage. I had spent 3 years helping bring the Lyric back from boarded windows and pigeon nests. Getting married there had been Evan's idea, though he claimed it was mine because I had once said the lobby looked beautiful after midnight. Maya came down the aisle, holding a clipboard against her chest. She was our videographer, a former assistant of mine, and one of the few people I trusted around original files. "The booth access clause is signed," she said. "The theater technician handles power, signal, and emergency shutdown. I control playback. Nobody else loads media or calls cues through me. Not even family," Evan said. "Especially family," Maya replied. I initialed the final page. At the time, it felt like ordinary caution. 4 months of arguing over a documentary had taught me not to leave vague spaces in writing. The project was called The Red Dress. 20 Years of Forgiveness. My mother loved that title. It gave her everything she wanted in 6 words: a wounded child, a redeemed family, and a villain who had supposedly refused redemption. That villain was me. The producer had contacted me in June, asking for an interview and permission to use wedding footage as the documentary's final chapter. I had refused. I had also told her that the old television segment at the center of the film had been edited to create a false account. She had responded professionally. If I could provide source material, records, or a credible witness, the production would review them. Until then, my denial was one disputed memory against a broadcast that had existed for more than 2 decades. So I had started looking. Evan stepped beside me as Maya returned to the booth. "We can cut the family tribute," he said. "No explanation needed." My mother would turn that into the whole story. "She'll turn anything into the whole story," Evan replied. He was right, which irritated me more than if he had been wrong. I folded the contract and slid it into my leather portfolio. "Let them submit the montage," I said. "Maya will review it before anything goes into the system." "And Talia's speech?" Evan asked. "She's supposed to give a toast, not deliver closing arguments," I replied. "You still think they'll behave?" Evan said. "I think they know there will be witnesses," I replied. His mouth tightened, but he let it go. We finished the walkthrough, checked the lobby lights, then left through the side corridor while the catering manager measured table spacing on the reception floor. I made it halfway to the parking lot before remembering the approved cue sheet on the editing room desk. "Go ahead," I told Evan. "I'll be 2 minutes." The side hallway had gone quiet. Behind the auditorium, the old walls were thick enough to swallow music, but the editing room door had not latched. A narrow line of white light cut across the carpet. Talia's laugh came through first. "I'll ruin her dress, then destroy her in my speech," she said. "She'll be too busy trying not to cry to stop the montage." My hands stopped an inch from the door. My mother's voice followed, calm and exact. "Not before the photographer gets upstairs. If the damage happens too early, there won't be a clean reaction." "She may not react," my father said. "Marin freezes when she knows she's being watched. Then Talia keeps pushing," Mom replied. "Mention the red dress. Mention how she left home instead of apologizing." A chair scraped across the floor. "And the cameras keep rolling," Dad said. "No one stops if she starts yelling. We need the whole thing." The metal edge of my portfolio pressed into my palm. My fingers had tightened around it without permission. Hard enough to leave a straight red line. I could have opened that door. Part of me had already pictured it. Talia's face losing color, my father reaching for the nearest excuse, my mother lifting one hand and asking why I was listening to a private family conversation. They were ready for anger. They had planned around it. Then Mom said, "It worked with the red dress. It will work again." Cold metal against my fingers. Hot lights above a dressing room mirror. Talia crying hard enough to hiccup while a red camera light burned beside my father's face. The memory struck in pieces, sharp and badly joined, like film repaired by someone who did not care whether the frames belonged together. I stepped away from the door, not because I was afraid of them, because for the first time I understood that my reaction was part of their equipment. Outside, Evan was waiting beside the car. One look at me, and he put his keys back in his pocket. "Tell me what happened," he said. "They're planning to damage my dress," I said. "Who was involved?" Evan asked. "All 3 of them," I replied. I told him what I had heard, though not yet what the red dress meant. That story had sat between my ribs for so long that speaking it aloud still felt like pulling thread through scar tissue. Evan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he opened the driver's door, reached inside for his phone, and said, "I'm calling the venue. Their invitations are canceled tonight." "Don't make that call yet," I said. He turned toward me. "Marin, they are planning to sabotage our wedding, and if we throw them out now, my mother tells the producer I panicked because Talia planned to mention the past. She gets exactly what she needs without touching the dress. This is our wedding, not a controlled experiment. I know that. Do you understand that?" His voice stayed low, which made the question land harder. "Because it sounds like you're willing to keep 3 people in the room just to see what move they make next." The parking lot lights had come on above us. Moths circled the nearest fixture, tapping against the glass. "I won't let them control the room," I said, "but I need to know how far this goes." Evan looked past me toward the theater doors. "And what happens if knowing costs us the day?" I had no good answer. That was the first crack in my plan, though I refused to call it one then. We did not cancel the invitations. Instead, I called Maya and changed the access list while Evan stood beside me, arms folded. Only Maya could enter the booth during the reception. No outside drives, no last-minute slideshows, no family member calling a queue. The theater's technician would remain at the power console and take instructions from Maya alone. Next, I asked the venue manager to preserve the hallway security footage for the entire wedding weekend. I changed the bridal suite code and limited entry to Maya, my seamstress, 2 bridesmaids, and me. Anyone else needed an escort. "You've done this before," the manager said. "Not with a wedding dress," I replied. By the time Evan and I drove home, neither of us had apologized. He cooked pasta. I answered emails. We moved around each other with the careful politeness of people carrying the same glass table through a narrow doorway. Near midnight, I opened the folder that had occupied my evenings since June. The broadcast copy of the red dress segment filled my monitor. The image had the soft blur of early digital tape, and the audio carried a faint hiss under every voice. 17-year-old me stood beside a dressing room mirror, silver scissors in one hand. 10-year-old Talia cried in our mother's arms. My father spoke from behind the camera. "Tell us why you did it, Marin." I paused the video before my younger self answered. For months, I had studied every cut, every shift in room tone, every place a reaction appeared before the words that supposedly caused it. The broadcast showed one camera angle. Yet in the mirror behind my shoulder, a tiny red dot glowed near the edge of the frame, a tally light. I enlarged the image until the pixels broke into squares. The dot remained. Beneath it sat the dark edge of what looked like a second tripod. My email was already open in another window. The message had arrived 3 days earlier from an address I did not recognize. There was no greeting or explanation, only a photograph of a small digital video cassette in a clear plastic case. The handwritten label read, "Red dress, Camera B, do not ingest." I had assumed it might be a cruel joke or bait from someone attached to the documentary. After what I heard behind the editing room door, the label no longer looked random. My family was not inventing a new humiliation for my wedding. They were repeating a method they already trusted, right down to the damaged dress and the waiting cameras. I leaned closer to the frozen reflection on my screen. There had been another camera in that room. And for 22 years, someone had made sure I never saw what it recorded. 4 months before my wedding, a producer named Julia Mercer sent me an email with the subject line, "The Red Dress Documentary." At first, I assumed it was another request to license archive footage. My inbox collected those the way an old theater collected dust. A production company would discover a damaged reel, ask whether I could restore it, then disappear for 3 weeks while someone argued about the budget. Julia's message was different. She was developing a documentary called The Red Dress, 20 Years of Forgiveness, and my family had recommended me as a participant. The film, she explained, would explore how one childhood betrayal had shaped 2 sisters in opposite ways. Talia had chosen forgiveness. I had chosen distance. Attached to the email was a short proposal. My mother's fingerprints were all over the language, though her name appeared only in the section listing interview subjects. Marin Holloway, the proposal said, had never accepted responsibility for destroying her younger sister's dress before an important televised performance. Her refusal to apologize had divided the family for more than 2 decades. I read that paragraph 3 times, then closed the attachment and walked to the kitchen. The coffee maker had finished 10 minutes earlier. By the time I poured a cup, the surface had already formed that thin, dark skin coffee gets when it sits too long. I drank it anyway, standing at the counter while rain ticked against the window. Julia had included a release form broad enough to cover interviews, photographs, childhood footage, wedding footage, and any spontaneous interactions that occurred during production. I did not sign it. Instead, I wrote back that the original television segment had been edited to create a false sequence of events. I told her I had not cut Talia's dress and would not appear in a film built on that accusation. Julia replied the following afternoon. Her answer was careful, without being cold. She said the production had a duty to review credible challenges to source material, but the broadcast had existed in the public record for more than 20 years. If I had production notes, unedited footage, correspondence, or a witness with direct knowledge, she would examine it. My denial alone could not erase an established source. That sentence stayed with me because she was right. I had spent years resenting people for believing a video I had never been able to disprove. Yet, whenever someone asked what had really happened, I gave them the same answer. My mother gave me the scissors. The dress tore. Then everything went wrong. It was true, but truth without structure can sound like an excuse. So I began looking. The old broadcast copy came first. A regional archive had preserved it after the public television station changed owners, though the online version was compressed and missing several seconds at the beginning. I found a longer promotional clip on a retired teacher's community website. Then came newspaper listings, a production credit sheet, and 2 old photographs showing the dressing room from different angles. Nothing proved what my mother had done. Still, the material gave me something I had not possessed at 17. Time. I could stop the image, enlarge it, listen twice, compare 1 second to another. Nobody stood behind a camera demanding an answer before I had understood the question. The first night I studied the broadcast, the sound of the scissors opening carried me back more cleanly than any photograph could have. Metal scraped against metal. The dressing room smelled of hairspray, hot fabric, and the sweet face powder my mother used on Talia before every performance. Bright bulbs surrounded the mirror, throwing enough heat to make the back of my neck damp. Talia sat on a folding chair in her red dress, knees pressed together, violin case at her feet. She was 10 years old and small for her age, though the stiff skirt made her look wider when she sat. Black mascara had collected beneath one eye. "I don't want to go out there," Talia said. Her voice barely reached me over the hum of the lights. Mom stood behind her with both hands on Talia's shoulders. "You're nervous because this matters," she said. "Nerves are a sign that you're ready." "I'm going to forget the second piece," Talia replied. "You practiced it all month." "I forgot it backstage." "You haven't even gone backstage yet." Talia looked at me through the mirror. Her lower lip quivered once, then disappeared between her teeth. I had been called in from the hallway, where Dad had told me to wait until the crew needed help. I was wearing jeans and a gray sweater, no makeup. No reason to be inside a filmed segment about Talia's performance. Mom reached toward the sewing kit on the counter and picked up a pair of small silver scissors. "There is a loose thread near the zipper," she said. "Marin, take care of it while I fix her face." The scissors felt warm from the lights. "Where?" I asked. Mom touched the back of Talia's dress, but her fingers covered the exact spot. "Right there. Be careful." Dad moved behind his camera. "Step closer to the mirror, Marin," he said. "I'm trying to see the thread. The light is better near the mirror." A second red light glowed at the edge of my vision. At the time, I thought it belonged to another piece of equipment. Dad adjusted his position. "Hold the scissors in your right hand." "I am holding them in my right hand." "Raise them a little." I looked at him. "Why?" "So I don't film the top of your head." Even at 17, the answer sounded wrong. But my mother was dabbing powder beneath Talia's eye, and my sister had started whispering the first notes of her piece under her breath. I turned back to the dress. The fabric near the zipper had already opened by 1/2 inch. A pale thread curled from the seam. I caught it between 2 fingers and brought the scissors closer. The moment the blades closed, the seam split. Not where I cut. It opened from the zipper down, a long tearing sound followed by Talia's sharp cry. Mom spun around. "What did you do?" she asked. The scissors were still in my hand. I cut the loose thread. There was no loose thread. "You showed it to me." Talia stood too fast. The back of the dress sagged open, and she grabbed the fabric against her body. Mom pulled her close, then turned toward the camera. "Marin, why would you do this to your sister?" I remember the question more clearly than I remember my own answer. It was too ready, too complete. As if she had been waiting for the dress to tear before I ever entered the room. "I didn't do anything to her," I said. "You're holding the scissors. You gave them to me." Behind the camera, Dad shifted his weight. The tripod clicked against the floor. "Stay where you are," he said. "Turn that off. We need to understand what happened." "I just told you." Mom's arm tightened around Talia. "You have been jealous of her since she got this performance." "No, I haven't." "You said she wasn't ready." "I said she was scared." Talia's breath came in little broken pulls against Mom's shoulder. Then my sister lifted her head. "She didn't do it," Talia said. Mom looked down at her. "Honey, we all saw what happened. You gave her the scissors." The room went still, except for the low electrical hum around the mirror. Dad lowered the camera slightly. Mom bent until her face was level with Talia's. "You are upset, and you're confusing things." "No, I'm not." "Talia," Dad said from behind the camera, "tell us what you saw." My sister's eyes moved toward the red light. That was where my memory broke. For years, the next thing I could recall was standing alone beside the mirror after they had taken Talia into another room. The silver scissors lay on the counter. Someone had closed them and placed them neatly beside the sewing kit. When the segment aired 3 weeks later, none of Talia's words appeared. The broadcast opened with footage from rehearsal. I stood in the wings while Talia practiced on stage. The camera caught me watching her, arms crossed. Then came a close shot of the scissors in my hand. The torn dress followed. Talia cried in our mother's arms. Finally, the program showed me saying, I didn't do anything to her, but the sentence came after Mom asked whether I was sorry. The order made my denial sound almost cruel. Dad's voice played over the final image. Families cannot heal until everyone accepts the harm they have caused. At 17, I knew the piece was dishonest, but I could not have explained how it had been built. At 39, I could hear the seams. The background hum changed between Mom's question and my answer. In the first shot, an air conditioning unit rattled every few seconds. During my reply, the rattle vanished. Talia's hands also changed position. One moment she held the torn fabric against her left hip. In the next, both hands were around our mother's waist. Those shots had not happened in a continuous exchange. Even the sound of Mom's voice carried a different reflection in one section, as if she had repeated the question from another spot in the room. That did not prove the entire scene had been staged. Television segments were edited all the time. Pauses were shortened, repeated answers were removed, camera angles were rearranged. What it proved was that the broadcast was not an untouched record. Someone had chosen the order. Someone had removed Talia's first response. Someone had decided what the audience would believe before the audience ever saw us. The consequences did not end when the credits rolled. My parents enrolled me in counseling for what the therapist called aggression between siblings. Every Tuesday afternoon, I sat in an office that smelled of cinnamon tea while a woman asked what I had been feeling when I damaged Talia's dress. I didn't damage it, I said during the first session. She nodded and wrote something on her pad. During the second, she asked whether denying the event helped me avoid shame. By the fourth week, I stopped answering the question. That autumn, a local museum withdrew an internship offer after my mother told the program coordinator I was dealing with serious behavior problems at home. Nobody accused me directly. The coordinator simply said another student had become a better fit. At Thanksgiving, my aunt asked me to stay in the dining room while her 2 young daughters played upstairs. Just until things calmed down, she said, smoothing the front of her sweater. You understand. I understood perfectly. They had watched the television. The summer after graduation, I turned 18 and told my father I would not attend another counseling session built around a confession I refused to make. Dad stood in the garage with his hands in his pockets. If you won't participate in healing this family, you need to find somewhere else to live, he said. Mom remained inside. Talia watched from the kitchen window while I loaded 2 suitcases into a friend's car. Later, Patricia told relatives that I had chosen pride over reconciliation. My leaving became the final scene in her version of events. For a long time, I answered by building a life she could not edit. I went to college on loans and part-time work. I learned to handle damaged film because I liked the honesty of physical material. Scratches stayed scratches. Missing frames left gaps. A reel might be incomplete, but it did not change its story to please the person holding it. Over the years, I sent my parents 3 written requests asking them to stop using my name in public talks. They ignored the first 2. Dad answered the third by saying the broadcast belonged to the station and family history could not be copyrighted. I spoke to an attorney once, but the station owned the old program, the public statements varied, and I had no original material proving the event had been staged. A lawsuit would have turned the red dress story into the center of my adult life. I wanted a career, friends, ordinary Sundays, and a home where nobody reached for a camera when someone cried. So I chose distance and told myself distance was enough. That was not the whole truth. Some part of me was still waiting for Talia to call. Not with a public apology or a prepared statement. I wanted my sister to say she remembered Mom giving me the scissors. I wanted one person who had been in that room to confirm that I had not invented my own life. She never did. The morning after I overheard the wedding plan, I returned to the broadcast and compared it with the longer promotional clip. Near the end of the clip, the frame widened for less than 2 seconds. The dressing room mirror caught more of the space behind me than the final program had shown. There it was again. A tiny red tally light, low and slightly to the left of Dad's camera. Beneath it, the dark edge of a tripod leg cut across the reflection. I opened the station's scanned production notes. Most of the pages were routine call times and equipment lists, but one line beside the dressing room footage read, Cam A, close family reaction. Come Nobody labeled a camera A unless another camera existed. I called Ruth Alvarez, my mother's former assistant editor. Her number had taken 2 weeks to find, and when she answered, a television game show played softly in the background. My name is Marin Holloway, I said. The sound on Ruth's end disappeared. She must have muted the television. I know who you are, she replied. I'm reviewing the red dress segment from 2003. You should speak to the station. The station only has footage marked Camera A. Silence pressed into the line. I found a second tally light in the mirror, I continued. I need to know who operated Camera B. Ruth released a slow breath. That was a long time ago. Not for me. I don't have any tapes. I didn't ask whether you had them. Another silence followed, longer than the first. When Ruth spoke again, her voice had dropped. If you found Camera A, stop asking the station for Camera B, she said. Your mother never sent that tape to the station. Ruth called me back 20 minutes after hanging up. Tomorrow morning, she said. 8:30. The Eaton Park in Dormont. Near the back windows. I'll be there, I replied. Come alone. No, I said. I'll come without my family, but someone will know where I am. A tired breath crossed the line. You always were difficult. You only knew me through footage my mother edited. Ruth did not answer that. She ended the call, and I wrote down the time while it was still fresh. By Monday morning, rain had darkened the sidewalks and pasted yellow leaves against the curb. The diner smelled of coffee, fryer grease, and the cinnamon syrup someone had spilled near the register. Ruth sat in the last booth with a canvas bag wedged between her shoes. She looked smaller than I remembered. Silver hair curled around her ears, and both hands circled a white mug she had not touched. A folded newspaper lay beside her plate. You have your mother's walk, Ruth said when I approached. I'll try not to hold that against myself. The corner of her mouth moved, though it never became a smile. I slid into the opposite side of the booth and placed my phone face down between us. I'm not recording, I said. You can check. I believe you. That would make you the first person from the old production who ever did. A server came by, and I ordered coffee. Ruth waited until the woman moved away before speaking again. There were 2 cameras in the dressing room, she said. Your father operated the main one. A production assistant handled the second. Who? A young man named Eddie Collins. He moved to Arizona years ago. I heard he died during the pandemic. My coffee arrived. The ceramic cup burned against my fingertips, but I kept both hands around it. What happened to his tape? I asked. Patricia took it. From the station? It never reached the station archive. Ruth looked toward the rain-streaked window. Your mother said the audio on Camera B needed to be checked before ingest. Grant took the cassette home after the shoot. And nobody asked for it back? I did. What did she say? That the tape had been damaged. Did you believe her? Ruth's spoon scraped once around the inside of her mug. I believed whatever allowed me to finish the program and collect my paycheck. The answer was ugly, but at least she did not decorate it. Who edited the segment? I asked. I assembled the first cut. Patricia supervised the final. Did you hear Talia say, Mom gave me the scissors? Ruth's gaze dropped to the table. Her knuckles tightened around the mug. Yes. The noise of the diner seemed to move farther away. Plates clattered behind the counter. A child whined near the entrance, and somebody laughed at the television above the pie case. None of it reached the space between us. Why wasn't it broadcast? I asked. Your mother said Talia was confused. She wasn't. I know that now. You knew it then. Ruth flinched, though only around the eyes. She was 10, Ruth said. Children say things when they're frightened. And 17-year-olds? Ruth looked at me. What do they say when no one believes them? I asked. The server returned to refill our coffee. Neither of us touched our cups until she left. Ruth opened her canvas bag and removed nothing. Instead, she rested one palm over the zipper. I received an edit decision list from Patricia, she said. There was a note beside the section where Talia defended you. Remove. Confuses emotional line. Do you still have it? I may have kept a copy. That means yes. It means I need to look. Why keep it for 22 years? Her fingers pressed harder against the bag. Because your mother had a habit of forgetting which decisions were hers. There it was, not courage, insurance. Ruth had not saved the paperwork for me. She had saved it in case Patricia ever needed someone else to blame. You think showing me a page makes you part of the solution, I said. It doesn't. I never said it did. If you keep hiding it, my mother will use your silence exactly the way she used that edit. She'll say nobody objected because there was nothing wrong. Ruth's face stiffened. Do you plan to drag me into court? I plan to establish what happened. Your role in that depends on what you do next. You sound like an attorney. I sound like someone who learned not to enter a room without knowing where the exits are. For the first time, Ruth picked up her coffee and drank. The cup rattled against the saucer when she set it down. I'll look through my files, she said. That is all I am promising. It's more than you promised me in 2003. I left cash beneath my cup and stood. Ruth caught my sleeve before I could step away. Be careful with Grant, she said. What did he do? Your mother needed people to watch her story. Your father needed copies of everything. She released my arm. And I walked out into the rain with no documents, no tape, and one direct admission from a witness who still wanted the luxury of deciding whether the truth was convenient. By noon, my mother was waiting at the bridal salon. She sat on a cream sofa beneath a framed sketch of a ball gown, wearing camel-colored slacks and a pearl gray sweater. A navy folder rested across her knees. She had brought no appointment and no invitation from me. My seamstress Claire met me near the fitting platform. I told her the dress isn't here, Claire murmured. It was. We had moved it into a locked workroom after I described the Overheard plan. Claire had also photographed every seam, zipper, button, and panel that morning. I'll handle her, I said. Mom rose with the careful smile she used around strangers. I thought we could have lunch after your fitting, she said. Just the two of us. I finished the fitting last week. Her eyes flicked toward Claire, then back to me. I must have written the date down wrong. You didn't have the date. A little silence opened. Claire excused herself and disappeared through the bead curtain, leading to the alterations room. Mom waited until we were alone before offering me the navy folder. The documentary producer needs a few final permissions, she said. Nothing complicated. I opened the folder. The first page identified the project as a documentary about family memory and forgiveness. The second gave the production company permission to use my name, likeness, childhood photographs, past recordings, wedding footage, reception footage, and spontaneous interactions connected to the event. The language covered reactions whether or not I knew filming was taking place. I read the page twice. This isn't permission for a family tribute, I said. It lets them use nearly anything recorded at my wedding. It's standard. No, it's broad. Marin, you work in media. You know attorneys write these forms to cover every possibility. I also know people don't sign away unlimited wedding footage 6 days before the ceremony. Mom folded her hands. Julia wants to give you a chance to tell your side. I already told her my side. You sent an accusation without proof. I sent a dispute about source material. That distinction may matter in your world, but viewers understand people. They'll want to see your face when you talk about Talia. My face does not prove who cut a dress. Her smile tightened. No one is saying it does, she replied. But refusing to participate makes it look as if you're afraid of what the film will show. I closed the folder. Then the film can show me refusing to participate. You're making this harder than it needs to be. For whom? The softness vanished from her eyes, though her voice remained gentle. Your sister has spent most of her life trying to make peace with what happened, Mom said. This wedding could finally show people that our family survived. My wedding is not the ending of your documentary. Our family helped make you who you are. That's not the argument you think it is. She stood very still, then reached for the folder. I held it against my side. I'm keeping a copy, I said. You haven't signed it. I know. Her gaze rested on the folder for another second. Julia will think you're afraid of the truth. Julia can ask me herself. Mom picked up her handbag. As she moved toward the door, her perfume followed, the same powdery scent that had filled the dressing room in 2003. You have always confused suspicion with intelligence, she said. And you have always confused permission with silence. The bell above the salon door rang when she left. Claire came back carrying a garment bag that was empty except for a padded hanger. She believed me about the dress, Claire said. No, she accepted that she couldn't prove you were lying. Claire looked toward the window where Mom crossed the street without opening her umbrella. Do you want me to move the gown off-site? Yes, I replied, and don't tell me where until Friday. That evening, Talia arrived at my house with a white bakery box and a framed photograph. Evan was still at the Lyric, checking a stubborn hum in the center speaker. I had not told Talia he would be gone, which meant she had either guessed or asked someone else. I brought the almond cookies you like, she said when I opened the door. And I found this in Mom's attic. The photograph showed the two of us on Halloween. I was 12, dressed as a pirate in a coat 3 sizes too large. Talia sat on my shoulders wearing a cardboard crown, one hand tangled in my hair. Neither of us looked afraid of the other. I thought you might want it for the memory table, she said. We're not having a memory table. Talia stepped inside before I invited her. The bakery box gave off the warm scent of butter and sugar. I know things have been tense, she said. I don't want this week to become another family disaster. Then don't create one. Her fingers tightened around the frame. What is that supposed to mean? You tell me. Talia set the photograph on my entry table, then carried the cookies into the kitchen. She knew the house well enough to find plates without asking. Mom said you're trying to block the documentary, she said. I disputed a false claim. You always make everything sound like a deposition. You always make everything sound like a podcast introduction. She placed 3 cookies on a plate, though only 2 of us were there. I came to make peace, Talia said. No, you came to find out what I found. The plate stopped halfway across the counter. What have you found? The question came too quickly. I took 1 cookie and broke it in half. Almond crumbs scattered across my palm. Do you remember who handed me the scissors? I asked. Talia looked at the crumbs instead of my face. We were kids. That wasn't my question. Childhood memories change. Then, why are yours clear enough to sell tickets? Her head lifted. I don't sell tickets because of you. You tell the story at paid events. I talk about forgiveness. You talk about forgiving me for something I didn't do. Talia pushed the plate away. There it is. 6 days before your wedding, and you still need to fight about a dress from 2 decades ago. You're helping make a film about it. Because people connect with the story. Which version? A line appeared between her eyebrows. The true one, she said. In one interview, you watched me cut the dress. In another, you found it after I left. Which one are you planning to use Saturday? The skin around her mouth tightened. Have you been collecting my interviews? I restore damaged records. Comparison is part of the job. What exactly are you looking for, Marin? Camera B. The words landed cleanly. Talia's hand moved toward the counter, missed the edge, then settled against the cabinet. It took less than a second, but I saw it. I don't know what that is, she said. Then why did your voice change? It didn't. She picked up her purse. You're making yourself sick over this, Talia continued. Evan should know how bad it's getting. Leave him out of your diagnosis. I'm worried about you. No, you're worried about what I can prove. Talia headed for the door, abandoning the cookies and photograph. Before stepping outside, she turned back. Some memories are the only thing holding a family together, she said. A lie held long enough is still a lie. Her gaze moved over my face, searching for something. Fear, maybe, or uncertainty. She did not find enough of either. After the door closed, I wrapped the cookies and put them in the freezer. I left the childhood photograph face down on the entry table. Ruth's email arrived just after midnight. The subject line contained only my name. 2 files were attached. The first was a scan of a logging sheet dated October of 2003. Each recorded section had a tape number, time code, camera designation, and short description. Camera A contained the familiar material. Marin watches rehearsal. Marin enters dressing room. Dress damaged. Family reaction. Camera B listed more. Patricia checks seam. Grand position Marin. Talia says, mother gave scissors. Retake after child calms. My eyes moved back to that final line. Retake. They had not simply edited a chaotic event. They had paused, calmed my 10-year-old sister, and started again. The second attachment was an old fax, the paper gray around the edges. Ruth had sent a preliminary edit note to my mother asking whether Talia's statement should remain. Patricia's handwritten response ran across the margin. Remove. Confuses emotional line. Below it, in darker ink, someone had added, use Marin denial after apology question. Stronger. I saved the original email, copied both attachments onto an offline drive, then created a second untouched copy for my records. I printed the message header and placed it with the release my mother had tried to make me sign. Only after that did I call Julia. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with sleep, until I explained what Ruth had sent. Forward the files to my production email, Julia said. Do not alter them or rename them. I haven't. I can pause use of the red dress footage in the trailer while we verify the documents. Pause? This supports your claim that material was removed. It does not prove who damaged the dress. The logging sheet says my mother checked the seam. That could mean several things. The note says she removed Talia's statement. It raises serious questions, Julia replied, but I still need the source tape. I looked at the photograph of the cassette on my monitor. Someone has it. Who? I don't know yet. Julia hesitated. Your mother told us the family plans to record a final interview at the wedding. She does not have permission. She said there would be a family tribute and that the reception might provide a natural ending. There is nothing natural about putting cameras around someone and waiting for her to break. I agree, Julia said. For the record, my crew is not attending your wedding unless you authorize it. But your family has its own videographers and existing footage agreements. That distinction mattered. Patricia did not need Julia's crew inside the lyric. She only needed a dramatic recording she could offer later. After the call, I opened the anonymous photograph again. A shelf code had been written beneath the camera B label, GH, followed by a date and a 2-letter category. I had seen that system before. My father labeled our home movies the same way. GH for Grant Holloway, BD for birthdays, CH for Christmas, TR for travel. The code on the camera B tape ended with PR. Production. Evan stood behind my chair, reading over my shoulder. He had come home during the call and remained quiet until I hung up. Grant sent the picture, he said. Or someone who wants me to think he did. Why warn you now? Because something changed for him. Could be a trap. It probably is. Evan rested one hand on the back of my chair. You say that like it makes you want to walk into it. It makes me want to know where the wire is. My phone vibrated beside the keyboard. The message came from my father's number. I have the tape. Your mother can never know I showed it to you. My father chose a private conference room above a shipping store near Pittsburgh International Airport. The building sat between a dental office and a vacant restaurant, far enough from my parents' neighborhood that nobody was likely to recognize his car. When I arrived Tuesday morning, 4 days before my wedding, Grant was already seated at the narrow table with a legal pad, a capped pen, and a black camera bag beside his chair. He did not stand when I entered. You came alone, Dad said. Evan knows where I am, and my attorney knows why. His eyes moved to the equipment case in my hand. I said I would show you the tape. I didn't say you could take it. I'm not taking the cassette. Then why bring all that? Because watching evidence in a rented room and walking away with nothing would be foolish. I placed the case on the table and opened it. Inside were a tested mini DV deck, a signal converter, cables, my laptop, and 2 solid-state drives. Everything had been checked the night before, with a blank cassette from the same period. Dad leaned back in his chair. You always did like making simple things complicated. You kept a tape hidden for 22 years. We passed simple a long time ago. He slid a sheet of paper across the table. The document stated that Patricia Holloway had independently conceived and directed the red dress segment, while Grant had acted only as a camera operator following her instructions. It also said he had preserved camera B because he believed the final program misrepresented what occurred. The final paragraph asked me to confirm that Dad had never intended to harm me. I put the paper down. You want me to sign this before I see the tape? I want to know you won't use it dishonestly. Dishonestly means showing your voice? His jaw tightened. Patricia supervised the segment. That isn't what I asked. You know what your mother is like. I know what you both did after it aired. Dad uncapped the pen and turned it between his fingers. The documentary people are asking questions. Patricia has already started telling them I controlled the technical side, which means she plans to blame me if anything becomes public. So this is about your divorce. It's about correcting the record. Then give the tape to an independent archive. I'm giving it to you. No, You're letting me see it while you keep control of the original, and you want a statement that removes you from the story. The pen stopped moving. I kept that tape because I knew you might need it someday, Dad said. The sentence carried the careful weight of something he had practiced alone. I looked at the black camera bag. I needed it when you told me to leave home. Everyone was too emotional then. You mean I was 17 and Mom still needed me to be guilty? It wasn't that simple. Did the tape exist when I was sent to counseling? Dad looked toward the covered window. Did it exist when Aunt Denise stopped letting me upstairs with her daughters? I continued. Did it exist when the museum withdrew my internship? Did it exist when you watched me put 2 suitcases into Amy's car? We believed distance would calm things down. Distance, emotion, confusion. My father spoke about his choices as if they were weather patterns that had moved through the house without anybody creating them. You don't get my signature, I said. Not before I see everything, and not afterward unless every sentence is true. Dad closed the pen and returned it to the table. You can watch the tape once. The cassette leaves with me. I make a full preservation copy while it plays. No clips. Agreed. The entire tape in sequence. You don't send my voice to the station. I make no promise about what I do before I know what your voice says. His fingers tapped the legal pad twice. If you refuse, I said, I walk out. Julia receives Ruth's records today, along with a written statement that you admitted possessing camera B, but would not permit independent review. You'd do that to your own father? You kept evidence that could have cleared your own daughter. The tapping stopped. Dad reached into the camera bag and removed a clear plastic cassette case. The label matched the photograph I had received. Red dress. Camera B. Do not ingest. A strip of yellowing tape sealed one side. Dad had written his initials across it years ago, then added a newer line in blue ink after the seal cracked. I took photographs of the case from every angle before he opened it. The cassette inside had light dust near the corners, but no visible mold or warped plastic. I photographed the label, the tape door, the serial marks, and the old handwritten date. You're documenting me like a criminal, Dad said. I'm documenting the condition of the source. I set my phone aside and connected the mini DV deck to the converter, then linked it to my laptop and the first drive. The deck's serial number went into my notes, along with the date, location, start time, and the name written on the cassette. Dad watched without speaking. The capture runs in real time, I said. If the tape lasts 40 minutes, we sit here for 40 minutes. We don't skip ahead, stop, or remove sections. I know how tape works. Then you know why I won't accept a few clips chosen by you. He handed me the cassette. For 1 second, the small plastic rectangle rested across both our palms. My father could still have pulled it back. His thumb shifted along the case, then lifted away. The deck accepted the tape with a soft mechanical click. A blue screen appeared on my laptop. Timecode numbers held steady at the top, followed by a burst of static and a crooked image of the dressing room floor. The picture corrected itself. Patricia stepped into view. My mother was 42 in the footage, younger than I was now. Her hair had been sprayed into a smooth blonde curve, and a headset rested around her neck. She looked toward the main camera, then toward the second one. Is Grant rolling? She asked. A man behind camera B replied that he thought so. Mom reached for the red dress hanging beside the mirror. Talia had not put it on yet. Patricia turned the garment around, examined the zipper, and took the silver scissors from the sewing kit. The blades opened. She cut 3 small stitches beneath the zipper, tested the weakened seam with her fingers, then placed the dress back on the hanger. My knee struck the underside of the conference table. The image shook, only because the production assistant holding camera B adjusted his shoulder. On screen, Patricia closed the scissors and returned them to the kit. Beside me, Dad said. I told her that was too much. The words barely registered. You knew before I entered the room. I knew she wanted the seam loose. I didn't know how far she planned to take it. You were recording. I thought she wanted a minor wardrobe problem for the segment. My fingertips had gone numb against the laptop's edge. I pulled my hands into my lap and locked them together until the pins and needles eased. The footage continued. 10-year-old Talia entered wearing a robe, violin case dragging behind her. Mom helped her into the red dress, zipped it carefully, then turned toward camera B. Stay wide, Patricia instructed. We need the family interaction. My younger self appeared several minutes later. 17 years old, gray sweater, hair pulled into a careless ponytail. I stepped into a room where everyone else already knew what would happen. Dad's voice came from outside the frame. "Move closer to your sister." The girl on the screen obeyed. Mom took the scissors and placed them in my hand. "There's a loose thread," she said. I watched myself search for it, while Patricia covered the weakened seam with 2 fingers. My father shifted his camera, directing me toward the mirror. When the blades closed and the fabric split, Talia screamed. I knew the scream. For years it had been the sound that opened the broadcast and every public talk my mother gave afterward. Yet camera B showed what the finished program had hidden. Patricia did not look surprised. She glanced toward Dad before she turned to Talia. "What did you do?" she asked me. On screen I stared at the scissors. "You gave them to me," my younger voice said. Talia clutched the back of her dress and shook her head. "She didn't do it," my sister said. "Mom, tell them she didn't." Patricia dropped to one knee in front of her. "Honey, you're confused." "No, I'm not. You cut it before." "Stop this," Mom whispered. Talia tried to step around her. "I saw you," she said. "Aaron didn't do it." Patricia caught both of Talia's wrists. Her voice lowered enough that the broadcast camera might not have captured it, but camera B's microphone did. "If you keep saying that, your sister will have to leave," Mom said. "Is that what you want?" Talia's face folded. She looked toward me, then toward Dad's camera. "No," she whispered. "Then help us fix this." My sister began to cry harder. "Can Marin stay if I do it again?" Talia asked. The room around me narrowed to the laptop screen and the low whir of the deck. I reached for the space bar. Dad caught my wrist before I pressed it. "You said no stopping." I pulled my hand free. "Don't touch me." The words came out rougher than I intended. My chair scraped backward, and I walked to the far wall because sitting beside him had become impossible. On screen, Patricia led Talia out of frame. Dad kept recording the empty mirror, the torn dress, and 17-year-old me standing beneath the lights. "Why are you still filming?" I asked from the past. "Because your reaction matters," Dad replied from behind the camera. The cassette continued turning. I pressed both palms against the cool wall and waited until the pressure behind my eyes eased. Crying would not have ruined the capture, but I refused to give Grant another chance to observe me while a camera ran. The most useful footage was also the part I could never play for a room full of wedding guests. Talia had been 10. Patricia had threatened her with losing me, then used the child's answer as material. Broadcasting that scene would prove what my mother had done, but it would also put my sister's terror on another screen for strangers to consume. "I won't use that section publicly," I said. Dad turned toward me. "It shows," Patricia, coercing her. "It shows a frightened child bargaining to keep her sister at home. It would make people understand. That is what Mom always said before she exposed us." He looked back at the laptop. I returned to my chair but did not sit beside him. Instead, I pulled a second chair to the far end of the table and watched from there while the tape played. The silence lasted nearly 40 minutes. During that time, Camera B recorded things none of them had meant the audience to hear. Patricia rehearsed questions. Dad asked for better lighting. Talia repeated an answer, then forgot which version her mother wanted. My younger voice grew flatter each time they pushed me back onto the marked spot beside the mirror. When the tape reached its end, the deck stopped and rewound automatically. I saved the capture as a read-only preservation file, then created a separate working copy. The software generated a digital fingerprint for the original file, a string that would change if even one part were altered. I printed it with the capture notes and photographed the completed record beside the cassette. Dad held out his hand. I returned the physical tape only after he signed a receipt, confirming that the cassette had been played once, captured in full, and taken back into his possession. "You didn't say anything about sending copies today," he said. "I said I would not let one family member control the only master again." Before leaving the building, I placed the preservation drive in a sealed envelope. Evan met me downstairs and drove one copy to my attorney, while I delivered a second to an independent archivist who signed for it that afternoon. Dad called twice. I answered the third time. "You had no right to distribute my property," he said. "I preserved evidence. You still have the cassette." "That tape was supposed to stop Patricia from blaming me." "You told me it was supposed to clear my name." "Both can be true." Not this time. That evening, I put on studio headphones and listened to the capture without watching the image. Voices hidden beneath chair scrapes and room noise became clearer when I removed the picture. Near the middle of the tape, my father's younger voice spoke from behind camera A. Put the scissors in her right hand, the other camera can't see them. A few minutes later, after my first denial, Grant told Patricia they needed another response because I had not sounded angry enough. The passive father I had wanted to find inside the footage did not exist. He had not simply watched my mother build a lie. He had adjusted the frame until the lie looked true. I kept listening. At the very end, after Patricia and Talia had left the dressing room, Dad spoke to the production assistant while he packed the cameras. Patricia will want camera B erased, the assistant said. Grant gave a quiet laugh. If either girl ever turns on us, I'm keeping this copy. Evan watched the rest of camera B, with the sound turned low. By then, I had already told him everything I could remember about the red dress, the counseling sessions, and the night my father made me choose between admitting something I had not done or leaving the house. The telling took almost an hour because parts of it refused to arrive in order. A garage door closing. Talia behind the kitchen window. My mother folding my clothes before placing them in garbage bags, as if neatness could make the act kinder. On the laptop, 10-year-old Talia sat beneath the dressing room lights, while Patricia wiped mascara from her cheeks. Can Marin stay if I say it right? My sister asked. My mother did not answer the question. Look at the camera, Patricia said. Tell us what you saw. Evan paused the video before Talia could speak. Do you still want to show this at the reception? He asked. The question should have offended me. Instead, I looked at the frozen image of my sister, with her fingers twisted in the red fabric. I made a draft last night, I said. How long? 12 minutes. Evan turned away from the screen. That isn't a correction. That's a documentary. It includes the full sequence. It includes a 10-year-old being cornered by her mother. It shows what happened. So does the section where Patricia cuts the seam. His voice remained steady, but something in my shoulders locked. You think I should protect Talia again? I said. I think you should decide what you need to prove. I need people to understand what they did to me. They will. You don't know that. No, I don't. Evan closed the laptop halfway, dimming the picture between us. But I know I don't want our vows to become the opening act for 12 minutes of your family hurting children. The words struck harder because he did not tell me to forgive anyone. He did not ask me to cancel the video or let my parents attend without consequences. He only asked where my wedding ended and their old production began. I carried the laptop upstairs without answering. The next morning, I opened my first draft in the editing room at work. It began with Patricia cutting the dress. Then came Talia denying I had done it, Patricia threatening to send me away, and my sister repeating the accusation until her words matched what our mother wanted. I had also included every mistake. Talia looked at the wrong camera. She forgot whether she had watched me cut the fabric or discovered it afterward. She asked if she should cry again. Patricia corrected her posture and made her repeat the sentence. Placed together, the clips made my sister look foolish. That had been intentional. The truth sat beneath cleaner, shorter material, yet I had chosen the takes where Talia stammered, sobbed, and begged for approval. Each cut answered a private injury rather than a factual question. Maya stood behind my chair while the draft played. She did not interrupt until the screen went black. You don't need the middle section, she said. I need the whole context. You need enough context to show who cut the dress and who arranged the scene. You sound like Evan. That doesn't make me wrong. I turned in my chair. Everybody keeps asking me to protect her. Nobody asked Talia to protect me when she was old enough to know better. I didn't say anything about protecting her. You said to remove the footage. I said it doesn't prove anything the first 2 minutes haven't already proved. Maya pointed toward the screen. The rest makes people laugh at a child who was trying to stop your mother from sending you away. She grew up and made a career out of that lie. Then use what she did as an adult. The room went quiet except for the cooling fan inside the computer. Maya picked up her bag. You taught me that the strongest evidence is not always the ugliest footage. It's the footage that answers the question. After she left, I played the draft again. This time, I watched what I had made instead of what had happened. I had cut to Talia's tears before each contradiction, because it gave the sequence more force. I had shortened her pauses to make her seem quicker to comply. In one place, I had moved Patricia's instruction ahead by several seconds, which did not change the facts but made Talia appear more eager to follow it. The choices were technically defensible. They were also unnecessary. My mother had spent years saying she only shaped confusing material into a story people could understand. Sitting in front of my own timeline, I heard how easily control could disguise itself as clarity. I deleted the sequence, not the source files. Those stayed preserved, untouched, and restricted. But the 12-minute version went into a folder labeled Rejected Drafts, where it belonged. Ruth arrived at my office shortly after lunch, carrying the same canvas bag she had brought to the diner. She removed a thick envelope and placed it on the desk between us. Inside were the original logging sheet, Patricia's handwritten edit instructions, and an edit decision list marked with the station's old production code. The paper smelled faintly of dust and cigarette smoke. "You kept the originals," I said. I told myself they were work records. "For 22 years? Ruth looked down at her hands. After the segment aired, Patricia asked me to destroy all rough notes. She said children deserved privacy once the program was finished. That sounded noble enough, until she began using the story in speeches. "Why didn't you come forward?" Because by then, I would have had to explain why I stayed quiet the first time. I spread the logging sheet beside the scan she had emailed. The handwriting, stains, staple holes, and station stamp matched. "I need more than the paper," I said. "If there is a formal review, someone will ask who created it, who handled it, and whether the notes were changed. I know. Are you willing to sign a declaration?" Ruth drew a folded page from the envelope. I wrote one. The statement identified her role in the production, confirmed that Patricia ordered the removal of Talia's statement, and admitted that Ruth followed the instruction despite believing the child's words were relevant. It also stated that Camera B was taken home by Grant before the station archived the project. Ruth had signed it in front of a notary that morning. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "That's good." Her mouth tightened, though she nodded. "If they question you," I continued, "you cannot suddenly decide you remember less. I won't. And if Patricia blames you, she probably will." Ruth slid the original records toward me. "I spent too many years hoping she would forget my name. I don't think she ever forgets a name she might need." I scanned each page while Ruth waited, then placed the originals in an archival sleeve. She signed a receipt showing when and where she had transferred them. After she left, an email from my father appeared. The subject line read, "Additional context." Grant had attached a password-protected folder containing old correspondence, scanned production notes, and financial records from his pending divorce. In the message, he repeated that Patricia had controlled the red dress story, and said the documents would make his limited role clear. They did not. Most showed a man collecting evidence against his wife while continuing to benefit from the same public story. Still, one file name caught my attention. Talia Red Dress Original Review. It was a PDF export of an email chain dated 7 years earlier. Grant was both a recipient and an active participant, which explained how he had obtained it. He had saved the exchange as protection in case Patricia or Talia ever accused him of hiding the original footage. The first email came from Talia. "I watched the digitized Camera B file tonight. Mom, you told me it was damaged." Patricia answered 23 minutes later. "You were a frightened child." Raw footage can be misleading because it lacks the emotional truth of the completed program. Talia replied that she had seen Patricia cut the stitches. My father entered the thread the next morning. "We agreed years ago that reopening this would hurt everyone. Delete the file after viewing." Talia did not delete the conversation. Her next message was longer. She wrote about her podcast, the schools that invited her to speak, and a book proposal built around forgiveness between sisters. She said listeners contacted her because the story helped them survive difficult families. If she changed her account, people would call her a liar. Then came the sentence that stripped away the last excuse I had kept for her. "I watched the original. I know Marin didn't cut it, but we can't change the story now." The timestamp showed that Talia had sent the email at 25 years old. Not 10. Not trapped beneath dressing room lights with our mother holding both her wrists. 25. Living in her own apartment, hosting her own show, and earning money every time she described me as the sister who had never apologized. I printed the email header, saved the PDF exactly as Grant had sent it, and documented the transfer. Then I opened a spreadsheet and began building a timeline. 7 years ago, Talia watched Camera B. 3 months later, she told a church audience that I had cut the dress because I hated seeing her succeed. The following year, she appeared on a regional podcast and claimed I had hidden the scissors afterward. 2 years later, she said in a paid workshop that my parents had begged me to apologize before I left home. Last winter, while promoting the proposed documentary, she told Julia's production team that I had never once denied the act until adulthood. Every statement came after the email. The details changed, but the purpose remained fixed. Talia had added whatever made the story stronger for the audience in front of her. By early evening, I had collected 9 public versions. In one, I was 15. In another, 17. Sometimes she saw me cut the dress. Sometimes Mom discovered me. Once, Dad found the scissors in my overnight bag, though I had not carried one that day. The contradictions would make an effective opening. People often defend one mistake. 9 versions make them listen. I called Maya. The extra file will be under 4 minutes, I said. What stays? Talia's public statements. The frame showing Patricia cutting the stitches. Dad's instruction about putting the scissors in my hand. Ruth's edit note. 1 sentence from Talia's adult email. And the footage of her as a child? None of it. Maya waited before asking, "Are you sure?" "No, but it's the right decision." That night, I removed every image of 10-year-old Talia from the working sequence. The new version did not ask the wedding guests to judge a child. It showed them what 3 adults had chosen, then what one of those children chose after she grew old enough to walk away. Before exporting the file, I read the email chain one last time. Talia's final message had not been included in the first page of the PDF. It appeared alone on the second, sent several minutes after Patricia thanked her for understanding. Marian already built a life without us. She can survive being the villain a little longer. I asked Talia to meet me at the Lyric on Wednesday afternoon, 3 days before the wedding. The theater was closed to the public, and the restoration crew had finished for the day. Without music or voices, the building settled into its old noises. Pipes clicked behind the walls. A loose chain tapped somewhere above the stage. Rain whispered against the marquee. Talia arrived 11 minutes late, wearing a cream coat and carrying sunglasses she did not need. "You said this was about Saturday," she said, as she followed me into the empty auditorium. "It is. Then why couldn't we meet at your house?" "Because Mom knows where my house is." Talia stopped beside the first row. "She knows where the theater is, too." "She doesn't know you're here." That answer made her glance toward the lobby. I had chosen 2 seats near the center aisle, far enough from the stage that neither of us would feel cornered. No cameras were running. My phone remained inside my bag, and I had told Maya not to come downstairs until Talia left. My sister sat but kept her coat buttoned. "What do you want?" she asked. I took the seat beside her, leaving one empty chair between us. "Do you still believe I cut your red dress?" Talia stared at the dark screen. "What matters is how it affected me," she said. "That isn't what I asked. I was 10 years old. I was humiliated on television. I lost the performance I'd worked for. Do you still believe I did it?" Her fingers folded around the sunglasses. "You're reducing a complicated childhood to one question. It was 1 pair of scissors. It was our entire family." "Did you watch Camera B?" Her head turned. For several seconds, the only sound came from water running through the gutters outside. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "Dad kept the original tape." A small muscle jumped near her mouth. "He told me it was destroyed." "So you did see it." Talia stood and took 2 steps toward the aisle. "Sit down," I said. "You don't get to order me around." "No, but you came here because you wanted to know what I have." Walking out answers my question. She stayed where she was, shoulders lifted beneath the coat. "I saw a digital file years ago," Talia said. "Dad claimed it was incomplete. It showed Mom cutting the stitches. It showed Mom checking the seam. With scissors. You know how footage can be taken out of context better than anyone." The answer might have worked if I had not heard my mother say the same thing in the email chain. "You wrote that you knew I didn't cut it," I said. Talia's grip loosened. One arm of the sunglasses slipped between her fingers and struck the floor. She looked down but did not pick them up. Dad gave you my emails. He sent a file because he thought it would protect him. That was private. You used my name in public for 7 years after writing it. I never said you were evil. You told audiences I attacked a child because I was jealous. I told them what it felt like. No. You told them what happened. Talia bent to retrieve the sunglasses, then sat in the seat she had left. Her coat opened slightly, showing a blue blouse beneath it. I was the one who had to stay, she said. The sentence came quietly. I waited. You left. Talia continued. You packed your bags, got into Amy's car, and disappeared. Mom cried for weeks. Dad barely spoke. Every time I asked where you were, they said you had chosen a life without us. I was 18. You were my sister. I had no money, no apartment, and no legal right to take you anywhere. You could have called. I did. Twice. I called more than twice. Mom answered your phone. Dad returned my letters. You stopped trying. I was working nights and sleeping on someone else's couch. And I was 11. The words came sharper now. Talia leaned across the empty seat between us. You got out, she said. You went to college. You found people who believed you. I stayed in that house and had to keep waking up with them. I didn't abandon you. They threw me out. That distinction probably helped you sleep. My hand tightened around the edge of the seat. I let go before the old fabric could creak beneath my fingers. What did the red dress story give you? I asked. Talia frowned. What? After you learned the truth, why keep telling it? It was already public. That isn't an answer. It helped people. So you said in the email. Women came up to me after talks and said they had sisters who hurt them. Parents wrote to me about forgiveness. The story meant something. It meant I was guilty. You had already built a life away from us. So my name became spare material. That is not what I said. You said I could survive being the villain longer. Her face lost what little color it had. The email had sounded cruel on paper. Hearing it sit between us was worse. Talia turned toward the stage. You did survive. That makes it acceptable? You have Evan. You have this place. You have a career people respect. Every time I tried to do something, Mom reminded me that the only reason anyone cared was because of what happened when I was 10. And instead of walking away from that, you fed it. What was I supposed to do? Talia asked. Stand up in front of everyone and announce that my whole life was built on a lie? Yes. A bitter laugh left her. That is easy for you to say. You lose nothing. My reputation was the thing you were selling. You never wanted the family back. I wanted the truth back. They became the same thing a long time ago. There was the center of it. Talia did not deny what happened because she could no longer tell truth from fiction. She knew the difference. She simply believed the fiction belonged to her now, the way a house might belong to the person who had lived in it longest. You have one chance to stop this before Saturday, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Stop what? Withdraw the family montage. Do not give the speech you planned. Tell Julia you watched the original footage 7 years ago and that I did not cut the dress. You expect me to destroy myself 3 days before your wedding? I expect you to correct a lie 3 days before you use my wedding to repeat it. Talia's voice dropped. What happens if I don't? I handle Mom and Dad separately. The reception stays out of it only if you keep the red dress story out of the reception. Is that a threat? It is a boundary. You decide whether there is a consequence. You sound just like her. Mom never gave either of us a choice. The answer landed. Talia looked away first. I did not show her the captured tape. I did not mention Ruth's signed statement, the preservation copies, or the 9 public clips Maya and I had already gathered. She knew enough to choose differently. Giving her a list of everything I held would only help her build a defense. What exactly do you think will happen? Talia asked. You show people old footage and suddenly they all love you? I'm not asking them to love me. Then what do you want? I want you to stop using my name to make yourself innocent. Her throat moved as she swallowed. People love me because I forgave you, she said. Do you understand that? It is the one thing I did that mattered. You forgave me for something you knew I didn't do. I forgave you for leaving. That was never the story you sold. It was the story underneath it. And you punished me for escaping. Talia stood again. This time, I did not ask her to sit. You always make yourself sound so reasonable, she said. Even when you're tearing somebody apart. I offered you a way to walk out of this without being exposed at my wedding. That is not mercy, it is control. No, control would be making your decision for you. She placed the sunglasses in her coat pocket. You think Evan knows who he is marrying? Talia asked. He knows more than you hoped. Does he know why you really left home? I just told you why. That is your version. My sister moved into the aisle. Her footsteps echoed toward the lobby, then stopped. If I correct the story, Mom will say I'm unstable, she said without turning around. Dad will say I misunderstood the tape. Everyone will believe them because they always sound calmer. I have the originals. And then what happens to me? You tell the truth and live with it. Talia looked back over her shoulder. You got a whole life, she said. I got one story. You had 7 years to choose another one. She left through the lobby doors, and the sound rolled through the empty theater long after the glass settled. I remained in my seat until Maya appeared at the end of the aisle. She's gone, Maya said. I heard. Did she agree? No. Did she refuse? Not in words. Maya held up her tablet. She submitted the family montage 10 minutes ago. I took it from her. The email contained a download link and a short cue sheet. There was no full speech, only the planned order, the name of the file, and a cue line showing where Maya was expected to press play. She sent this while she was sitting beside me, I said. The upload time says 4:12. Talia had asked what I possessed while her montage moved toward our playback system. Don't load it, I said. I haven't. I copied it into quarantine storage and preserved the email header. Send everything to me and Evan. Maya studied my face. Does he know about the extra file? He knows there is evidence. That wasn't my question. I returned the tablet. I'll tell him tonight. Evan found the draft before I did. When I arrived home, he was sitting at the dining table with my laptop open. The screen showed the 4-minute timeline, Patricia cutting the seam frozen in the preview window. Maya's forwarded cue sheet sat open beside it. How long were you going to wait? He asked. I was going to tell you tonight. That's convenient. I met with Talia first. And while you met with her, she sent instructions for a public accusation at our reception. I gave her a chance to stop. You also prepared a video to expose all 3 of them in front of 200 guests. Only if she goes through with it. Evan pushed back from the table. You decided that by yourself. It is my name on that footage. It is our wedding on Saturday. His voice rose for the first time since I had known him. Not enough to become shouting, but enough that the room changed around it. I didn't ask for permission to defend myself, I said. I'm not asking you to. That is what this sounds like. I'm asking why I had to discover your full plan by opening an email from Maya. I started to answer, then stopped. The defense I had prepared did not fit the question. You were ready to remove them, I said. I thought you would insist we cancel everything before I knew whether Talia would choose differently. So you kept me out until your plan was too far along to change. This started before you knew me. But Saturday belongs to both of us. I closed the laptop. You're right, I said. Evan's expression shifted, but he did not soften. I should have shown you the draft before I met Talia, I continued. I should have told you exactly what Maya and I were preparing. I am not sorry for preserving the option. I am sorry I treated the reception like it was mine alone to risk. He remained standing beside the table. What happens if Talia gives a normal toast? Evan asked. Nothing plays. If she mentions the past but does not accuse you? Nothing plays. If Patricia signals for the montage? Maya ignores her unless Talia uses the agreed cue and makes a specific claim. And if the file starts? It runs under 4 minutes. No footage of Talia as a child being threatened. No private material except the sentence from her adult email. Once it proves Mom cut the dress, Dad helped stage the image, and Talia knew the truth, the screen goes dark. No second video? No. No open microphone argument afterward? I will say what I need to say, then security removes them if they cause trouble. Evan lowered himself into the chair across from me. I don't want the worst moment of our wedding to become the part everyone remembers, he said. Neither do I. Then the conditions need to be written down. We wrote them together. Maya alone controlled playback. The theater technician would not accept instructions from any guest. The extra file required a direct accusation or an attempt to play the false family montage. Either Evan or I could stop it before playback. Once started, Maya would end it after the final evidence frame. Security would wait outside the reception room unless called. There was no embrace that made the disagreement disappear. We read each line twice, corrected the language, and sent the final instructions to Maya and the venue manager. Near midnight, my phone lit up with a message from Talia. "Sign the release, or I'll tell everyone why you really left home." Before I could respond, Maya forwarded the cue sheet Talia had sent to the booth. Under speaker cue, one sentence appeared in bold. "My sister has spent her whole life rewriting what happened to us." Directly beneath it were 2 words in capital letters: "Play montage." By Thursday morning, Talia's cue line had been entered into 3 separate documents. Maya had it in the restricted playback instructions. Evan had it in the written conditions we had agreed on. I had it printed beside my keyboard while I worked on the final version of the file. "My sister has spent her whole life rewriting what happened to us." Talia had chosen the sentence herself. If she said it at the reception and called for the false family video, she would trigger an answer she did not know existed. Maya sat at the second workstation in my editing room, headphones around her neck and a paper cup balanced near her elbow. Outside the narrow windows, Pittsburgh was still gray from 2 days of rain. Water crawled down the glass in crooked lines, while Talia's voice repeated through the speakers. "I watched my sister cut the back of my dress," she said in a church recording from 6 years earlier. I was standing right beside her. Maya stopped the clip and opened another. When I returned to the dressing room, the dress was already destroyed. Talia told a podcast host 3 years later. Marin had left the scissors on the floor. The 2 clips sat side by side on the screen. Maya looked at me. "Do we need a caption explaining the contradiction?" "No. Let her explain it herself." We added a 3rd public appearance. In that version, I had been 15, and our father had supposedly found the scissors inside my purse. I had been 17. Dad had filmed the scissors in my hand. I had not carried a purse into the dressing room. When the 3 statements played in sequence, the shift was almost funny. Not because Maya or I added jokes, music, or mocking titles. Talia created the effect herself by speaking with equal certainty each time the facts changed. Maya played the sequence from the beginning. The first clip showed my sister pausing before she said she watched me cut the dress. The second began with her insisting she had not witnessed it. The third included a solemn account of evidence that had never existed. A laugh escaped Maya before she could stop it. "Sorry," she said. "That reaction is the reason it goes first. It will sound like we edited her to look ridiculous. We're showing the dates and full sentences. People will still accuse you of selecting the worst examples. They can watch the original programs. Every source is public." I gave her the links and dates for the evidence log. Each clip had been downloaded from the account that published it, and the untouched files were stored separately from our working version. The final sequence showed no private conversations, and no material Talia could claim had been stolen from her. Next came the email. We did not show the entire chain. The screen displayed the date, sender, recipient list, and one sentence from Talia's adult message. I watched the original. I know Marin didn't cut it, but we can't change the story now. The line remained on screen long enough to read twice. After that, camera B filled the frame. Patricia entered the empty dressing room, took the silver scissors from the sewing kit, and cut the stitches beneath the zipper. No narration was needed. No arrow pointed toward her hands. My mother moved slowly enough for the camera to capture every choice. The footage ended before 10-year-old Talia entered. Then the picture went dark while Dad's voice played over a plain date label. Put the scissors in her right hand. The other camera can't see them. Maya lowered the volume after the sentence. "That is enough," she said. "It has to be." The final screen contained one statement. Original source material has been preserved for independent review. Total running time was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I watched the finished file twice without speaking. The first version I had built had tried to make people experience all 22 years at once. This one asked only 3 questions. Who cut the dress? Who constructed the image of me holding the scissors? Who knew the truth and continued telling the lie? Everything else could be examined later by people whose judgment did not have to occur between dinner and the wedding cake. Maya exported the file, created a digital fingerprint for it, and copied the locked version onto a clean drive. She placed the drive in a numbered evidence envelope, signed across the seal, then prepared a second copy for the booth. "No changes after this," Maya said. "No changes. No replacement file from anybody, including you, once I load it tomorrow." "Agreed." Her eyes remained on me. "And if you change your mind? I tell you to remove it before Talia reaches the microphone. That is the only way it comes out of the playlist." I signed the playback instruction beside Evan's signature. The file existed, but it still had no automatic right to appear. Talia had to cross a boundary she had already received in writing. Patricia had to attempt to use my wedding for the documentary. Maya had to hear the exact accusation. Until then, the screen would remain dark. Around noon, another folder arrived from Grant. My father had been sending documents in waves, each batch selected to make Patricia look worse than the last. He had included financial records, private arguments, and notes from their divorce that had nothing to do with the red dress story. I saved only the relevant material and left the rest unopened. One PDF was named Documentary Contingencies. The document appeared to have been scanned from Patricia's yellow legal pad. Her handwriting ran down the page beside 3 typed headings. "If Marin becomes emotional, preserve the full reaction. Use as final proof that she has not moved forward. If Marin remains calm, emphasize emotional detachment and lack of remorse. If the wedding plan becomes public, state that Talia acted independently because of unresolved childhood pain." I read the final paragraph again. Patricia had prepared to sacrifice Talia before my sister ever walked into the reception. A handwritten note beside the third option said, "Grant should confirm we were not involved." Dad had highlighted that line in the PDF. He wanted me to see that Patricia had planned to blame him. He had apparently missed the fact that the same page showed both parents preparing to place the entire scheme on Talia if necessary. Beneath Patricia's notes sat an email from my sister. "I need Mom and Dad to confirm in writing that this is a family decision." Patricia had answered without giving that confirmation. "Don't create unnecessary paper. We are all trying to help Marin face the past." Each person had entered the plan believing the others would protect them. Each had also prepared a way to leave the others behind. I sent the document to my attorney and Julia with a note explaining that Grant had supplied it. Then I called Talia. She did not answer. My next call went to Dad. He picked up immediately. "Did you read the contingency page?" "Yes. Now you see what Patricia was planning. I see what all 3 of you were planning. I had nothing to do with Talia's speech. You asked the wedding cameras to keep recording if I became upset. That was for documentation." "Of what?" Dad paused. "You know how your mother changes stories. So you planned to record me for your protection while she planned to record me for the film. That is not the same thing. It is from where I'm standing." His breath sharpened through the phone. "You need to remove my voice from whatever you are making." "No. I gave you the tape. You gave me the tape because Patricia was preparing to blame you. I could withdraw permission. You do not control the preservation copies and the audio documents what happened to me. That cassette belongs to me. The original still does. The copies are with counsel and an archivist because you admitted Patricia wanted the tape erased." Dad lowered his voice. "If you play edited footage at that wedding, I will tell everyone you manipulated it. You can say whatever you like. The full capture, the equipment record, and the digital fingerprint are already outside my possession." Silence followed. For years, Grant had kept the tape because ownership gave him power. He could threaten Patricia, frighten Talia, or offer me a few selected seconds while calling himself the only honest person in the family. Preserving the full recording had taken that role from him. "I saved you," Dad said. "You saved a cassette. If I had destroyed it, you would have nothing. If you had shown it when I was 17, I might have had a home." The line remained open, but my father stopped speaking. "Evidence that becomes useful to you does not buy forgiveness from me," I said. Dad ended the call. Within an hour, Patricia's concern began arriving through other people. A cousin I had not spoken to in 2 years texted Evan to say my mother believed wedding pressure was causing me to revisit events inaccurately. Aunt Denise called and left a message urging me not to make a permanent decision during an emotional week. Then Julia forwarded an email Patricia had sent to the documentary team. "Marin appears to be experiencing an episode related to unresolved guilt. Please avoid direct contact until after the wedding. Julia had answered that the production would communicate through counsel and would not use wedding footage without authorization. My mother had spent 2 decades describing my refusal to confess as proof that something was wrong with me. Now that evidence had surfaced, she was using the same method again. Not one message accused me of fabricating a specific document. They spoke instead about stress, pressure, confusion, and my inability to let the past go. By late afternoon, Evan had received 5 calls. "You want me to answer them?" he asked. "No. They're contacting guests now. Then guests can decide whether to attend. We could send everyone the proof before Saturday. That would turn the wedding invitation list into a jury pool." Evan placed his phone on the kitchen counter. "Patricia is counting on silence. She is counting on me defending myself in 20 separate conversations so she can point to the volume of my responses. What are you going to do?" I opened the email account we had used for wedding updates and wrote 4 sentences. "The ceremony and reception will proceed as scheduled. No family documentary, unauthorized tribute, or unapproved media will be included in the program. All playback material must be approved by both Marin and Evan. We look forward to celebrating with our invited guests. No mention of Patricia. No accusation. No request that anyone choose sides." Evan read it, then added his name beside mine. We sent it to the guest list. Patricia replied privately, 12 minutes later. "You are humiliating this family over a misunderstanding." I archived the message without responding. That evening, Evan and I walked through the lyric with Maya and the theater's technical supervisor. The supervisor controlled power, house lights, and the emergency stop. Maya alone controlled media playback from the locked projection booth. She entered a new password while we watched, then disabled outside file sharing on the booth computer. The approved wedding playlist had one visible track for the family tribute, but it was a harmless sequence of photographs Evan and I had chosen ourselves. Talia's video remained in quarantine storage, unable to play. The extra file sat in a separate backup list beneath a neutral name. Maya knew the cue. Nobody else did. "If Patricia comes to the booth?" Evan asked. "She doesn't get through the locked door," Maya replied. "If she tells the theater technician to play her file, he sends her to me, and I refuse. If Talia takes the microphone without permission, I listen." Maya looked at me. "You have to confirm once more. Is the sentence alone enough? Or does she also need to call for the montage?" "Both," I said. "She must accuse me, then attempt to play the false video, so she can stop after the sentence." "Yes. And if she changes the speech?" "Nothing happens." The condition mattered. I was not placing bait in front of Talia or arranging the microphone so she would fail. She had already been told there would be no red dress speech and no unauthorized montage. The only trap waiting at the lyric was the truth, and it would remain closed unless she tried to use the lie. Outside the booth, Evan leaned against the brass railing. "This is the last chance to remove all 3 of them from the guest list," he said. "I know. Say the word, and security stops them at the door." I looked down into the auditorium. Rows of red seats curved toward the dark screen. In less than 2 days, those seats would hold friends, co-workers, relatives, and people who knew nothing about Camera B. "If they respect the rules, they stay," I said. "If they do not, their own choices bring the consequences." Evan studied me for a moment. "And if they leave before the video finishes?" "They leave. You won't chase them." "No." That answer surprised me with its simplicity. For most of my life, I had wanted one of them to remain in the room long enough to admit what happened. Now, I had the original footage, the records, and a witness statement. Their confession was no longer the final missing piece. Friday night, I placed my phone on the dresser beside the earrings I would wear the next morning. A message arrived from Patricia just before 11. "Tomorrow, everyone will finally see which daughter has been lying." I looked at the locked file confirmation Maya had sent from the booth, then turned off the bedroom light. For once, my mother was right. 8 months later, I still remember the sound of scissors moving through silk more clearly than I remember the music that played when I walked down the aisle. Saturday morning began before sunrise at the Lyric. Rain tapped against the marquee while the florist carried buckets through the lobby and the caterers rolled covered trays across the reception floor. Somewhere above us, the theater's heating system groaned awake, filling the old walls with low metallic knocks. Claire arrived at 7 with my dress sealed inside a white garment bag. Before opening it, she photographed the zipper, side seams, hem, detachable train, and every hook beneath the waist sash. We had agreed on that after I overheard my family's plan. The dress had a fitted ivory satin body with a soft organza train that attached at the back with hidden loops. If someone damaged the outer layer, Claire could remove it without rebuilding the entire gown. Neither of us said that aloud, saying it would have made the morning feel like preparation for an attack instead of a wedding. "The stitching is clean," Claire said after finishing her inspection. "Nothing has changed since Thursday." She placed the dress on a padded hanger inside the locked bridal room, then handed me the keycard. Maya checked the hallway camera time against her phone. The camera covered the entrance but not the interior of the room. No lens pointed toward the dressing area, and I wanted it that way. Being protected did not mean surrendering every private moment to another recording. Only Claire, Maya, my 2 bridesmaids, and I were permitted inside without an escort. My mother challenged that rule before 8. Patricia stood outside the bridal room with Talia beside her, holding a narrow red velvet box. "This belonged to your grandmother," Mom said. "Your sister wants to give it to you privately." "You can give it to Maya," I replied. Talia pressed the box against her coat. "It isn't for Maya." Mom's gaze moved toward the hallway camera. "Surely you aren't afraid to be alone with your own sister for 5 minutes," she said. "I'm not afraid." "Then stop treating us like intruders." Claire remained in the room behind me, sorting pins on the makeup table. One bridesmaid was in the adjoining restroom, while the other had gone downstairs to check the bouquets. Talia would not be completely unobserved, but she would have access to the dress. That was exactly what I had tried to prevent. It was also the last opportunity to let her choose not to carry out the plan. 3 minutes, I said. Claire stays nearby. Mom gave Talia's arm a small squeeze before walking away. My sister entered and closed the door without latching it. The velvet box contained a red enamel hair comb shaped like 3 small leaves. I remembered it from childhood photographs, though I had never seen our grandmother wear it. Patricia had probably bought it at an estate sale and attached a family story later. She had done that before. "I thought you could wear it as something old," Talia said. "It's red. That doesn't make it dangerous." "No, people make things dangerous." She set the open box beside the mirror. My dress hung 6 feet away, the train gathered over the lower bar of the rack. Talia looked toward it once, then back at me. "You can still sign the release," she said. "Julia can present your side fairly." My answer hasn't changed. You know what happens if the film gets canceled. People stop watching a false story. Mom loses years of work. Dad gets blamed for the footage. My contracts disappear. You knew I didn't cut the dress before you signed those contracts. Her eyes moved toward Claire, who had stepped into the small storage alcove to find a missing package of hooks. "Do you have to do this today?" Talia asked. "You came into my bridal room to discuss a documentary. I came to give you a chance." So did I. My sister's fingers closed around the edge of the makeup table. "Withdraw the montage," I said. "Do not mention the red dress during the reception. Tell Julia you saw camera B 7 years ago. You don't get to write my speech. I get to decide whether my wedding is used as your set." Talia's chin lifted. "People deserve to hear my truth. Truth does not need 9 different versions." A knock sounded at the door. The wedding coordinator leaned inside and said the florist needed me to approve the ribbon on my bouquet. Claire was still searching through the storage alcove. I looked at Talia. "Put the comb back in the box," I said, "then leave." "I'm not stealing it." "I didn't say you were." The coordinator waited in the hallway. I stepped outside far enough to compare 2 ribbon samples beneath the lobby light. The discussion lasted less than 2 minutes. When I returned, Talia stood beside the makeup table with the velvet box closed in her hands. The dress appeared untouched. "Keep it," she said, placing the box beside my jewelry. Then she walked past me and into the hallway. Maya later preserved the camera footage showing that Talia entered at 8:17 and left at 8:22. It did not show what happened inside. It only proved she had been there. For nearly an hour, nothing went wrong. My bridesmaids finished their makeup. The florist delivered the bouquets. Claire steamed the lower edge of the gown, while I ate half a piece of toast, because Evan had made me promise I would not reach the altar running on coffee. At 9:15, I stepped behind the dressing screen and changed into the satin body of the gown. Claire fastened the zipper, checked the waist, then lifted the detachable train from the rack. Her hand stopped. She did not gasp or call my name. Claire simply lowered the fabric onto the table and spread it flat beneath the lights. A clean diagonal cut ran through the organza, beginning near one side of the waist attachment and extending almost 18 inches toward the center. The damaged layer would hang unevenly and pull against the remaining loops if she attached it. For several seconds, I heard nothing except the steam iron ticking as it cooled. "Can it be fixed?" I asked. "Not properly before the ceremony." My palm came down against the makeup table. Brushes jumped inside their glass cup, and the red velvet box slid an inch toward the edge. Claire did not tell me to calm down. "She cut it while I was standing in the hallway," I said. "We cannot prove what happened inside the room. She was the only person near it. We can prove the train was intact when I photographed it this morning. We can prove who entered afterward." I reached for the door. The thought of Talia waiting downstairs with the same careful face she had worn in the theater made my fingers close around the handle. Then I saw a shadow move beneath the gap. Someone was standing in the hallway. A phone made a soft click on the other side of the door. They were waiting, not for me to discover the damage, for me to run out carrying it. I released the handle. "Photograph everything," I told Claire. "The full train, the cut edge, the hooks, and the floor around the rack." She used both her phone and Maya's camera. Each image included the current time. Maya placed the damaged train in a clean garment bag after Claire finished documenting it. "Can you remove it?" I asked. "The train is detachable, so yes. I need about 30 minutes to reset the back sash, close the unused loops, and rebalance the hem." "Do it. You'll have a shorter silhouette. I'll still have a dress." Claire's mouth curved slightly. "A very good dress." The door opened before either of us invited anyone inside. Patricia entered first, one hand pressed to her chest. Grant followed with his phone held at shoulder height, the camera pointed directly toward me. "What happened?" Mom asked. She looked at the empty hooks near my waist, then at the garment bag on the table. "You know what happened," I said. Her eyebrows drew together. "Marin, did you cut your own train?" Grant's phone remained raised. Mom stepped closer. "People sometimes do things under pressure and don't remember clearly afterward." "Turn off the camera," I said. "We need a record," Dad replied. "Of what?" Patricia looked toward Claire. "Was Marin alone with the dress?" Claire stood beside the garment bag. "The gown was intact when I inspected and photographed it this morning." "That isn't what I asked." "It is the only question I can answer from direct knowledge," Claire replied. Dad moved closer, trying to angle his phone around her. I stepped between him and the table. "The dress has been handled," I said. "The ceremony will begin on time. Both of you need to leave this room." Mom's lips parted. "You're not even upset?" My right hand still throbbed from striking the table. "I didn't say that." "This is your wedding dress," Patricia continued. "Anyone would understand if you needed to let the emotion out. There is nothing here for your documentary." Her expression changed for less than a second. Not surprise, disappointment. Grant lowered the phone, though I did not hear the recording stop. "Maybe the wedding should be delayed," he said. "You're clearly under strain. The ceremony begins at 11. Mom reached for my arm. I moved before her fingers touched me. "Leave," I said, "or security removes you before the ceremony." Patricia stared at me, searching for the daughter she had expected to find beneath the dress and the cameras. Then she turned toward the hallway. "Come on, Grant," she said. "She needs space." They had created the damage, arrived ready to film the reaction, and still walked away, acting as though privacy had been their idea. Claire closed the door behind them and returned to the dress. "I can finish in 25 minutes, she said. "Take 30. While she worked, I stood in front of the mirror and let myself shake. Not for long. Long enough to stop pretending that good decisions required an empty face. Maya sealed the damaged train, logged the time, and carried it to the locked production office. The wedding coordinator adjusted the photography schedule without explaining why. At 10:20, Claire finished. Without the train, the gown fell in a clean line from my waist to the floor. She reshaped the back sash into a narrow fold, and covered the unused loops with hand-sewn satin tabs. Anyone who had not seen the original design would assume it had always looked that way. Evan saw me during our planned first look beneath the old balcony stairs. His smile came first, then his gaze moved toward the shortened back of the dress. "What did they do?" he asked. Talia cut the detachable train. His hand stayed at his sides. "Do you want to stop?" "No. I mean everything. The ceremony, the reception, their access to the building. I want to marry you. I want dinner with our friends. I want the band we paid too much money for." That brought a brief breath of laughter from him. "And them?" Evan asked. "They leave the moment they cross the line we wrote down." He held my gaze. "Then we continue. Because you choose it. Not because you refuse to let them see you change plans." "Yes." At 11, the theater doors opened. I walked down the center aisle without the train Patricia expected to see dragging behind me. The organ music rose toward the painted ceiling, and the audience stood beneath the restored gold lights. My parents sat in the second row. Talia sat beside them in blue silk, hands folded over her purse. I did not look toward them again during the ceremony. Evan's vows were simple. He promised to believe what I told him, even when the truth was inconvenient, and to speak when silence would leave me carrying something alone. When my turn came, I promised not to confuse strength with secrecy. Those words belonged to us. My family did not get to decide what they meant. We were married before noon. The reception began with champagne, dinner, and speeches from the people listed on the approved program. For almost 2 hours, my family behaved. Then the MC announced the first dance. Talia rose from her table. "I only need 1 minute," she said, reaching for the microphone before he could move it away. "It's for my sister." The MC looked toward me. Patricia was already watching the projection booth. She lifted 2 fingers in the signal written on Talia's cue sheet. The theater technician remained beside the lighting console. He did not move. Behind the booth glass, Maya sat alone at the locked playback system. Talia stepped into the center of the reception floor. "I know Marin asked us not to speak about the past today," she began. "But forgiveness means telling the truth even when someone wants it hidden." Evan's hand closed around mine beneath the table. Maya looked down through the booth window. I could still shake my head. Talia turned toward the screen. "My sister has spent her whole life rewriting what happened to us," she said. "Please play the family tribute." I nodded once. The screen behind her lit up. Talia's own voice filled the theater. I watched her cut it. Another recording followed before the room had time to settle. I never actually saw who cut the dress. A man near the back laughed. The man near the back laughed because he thought the video was a joke. A few people turned toward him. Then another clip appeared on the screen. Talia sat beneath studio lights in a pale pink blazer, telling a podcast host that I had been 15 when I destroyed her dress. The date beneath the clip placed the interview 3 years after another recording, in which she had correctly said I was 17. A woman at the table beside the dance floor covered her mouth. Someone else gave a startled chuckle. Then came the scissors. In one interview, Talia said our father had found them in my purse. In another, she claimed our mother had taken them from my hand. A third showed my sister insisting I had dropped them beneath the dressing room chair before running away. The laughter spread faster this time. It moved across the reception floor in uneven waves, from friends who assumed Talia had prepared a playful collection of her own mistakes to relatives who recognized how often she had told the story with complete confidence. Silverware stopped clinking. Chairs turned toward the screen. Even the band members leaned forward behind their music stands. Talia stood beneath the changing images with the microphone pressed against her chest. She looked toward the booth. Maya remained behind the locked glass, one hand resting near the playback controls. "This isn't the file I sent," Talia said into the microphone. Her voice traveled through every speaker in the theater. A few guests laughed again, thinking the mistake was part of the presentation. Patricia rose from her table. "Turn it off," Mom called toward the booth. The screen changed before she reached the aisle. A copy of Talia's email appeared against a plain background. The sender, recipients, and date were visible, followed by the one sentence we had chosen. I watched the original. "I know Marin didn't cut it, but we can't change the story now." Nobody laughed. The silence arrived so suddenly that I heard the theater's ventilation system running above the balcony. The email had been sent 7 years earlier. The clips that followed it carried later dates, each one showing Talia continuing the accusation after she had written that sentence. My sister stared at the screen. "You read my private email," she said. I did not answer. The file was still playing, and I had promised myself I would not turn the reception into a shouting match before the evidence finished. Camera B filled the screen. My mother appeared in the old dressing room alone. She lifted the red dress from its hanger, opened the silver scissors, and cut the stitches beneath the zipper. A glass struck a table somewhere behind me. Patricia stopped moving. On screen, her younger hands tested the weakened seam and placed the dress back where Talia would later find it. The video cut to black before my 10-year-old sister entered the room. Dad's voice came through the speakers over a plain date label. "Put the scissors in her right hand. The other camera can't see them." Grant had been halfway to the side exit. He stopped with one hand near the brass door bar. The final screen stated that the original recording, production records, and related correspondence had been preserved for independent review. Then the screen went dark. The file had lasted 3 minutes and 40 seconds. It had taken less than 4 minutes to remove 22 years of certainty from the room. Patricia reached Talia first and took the microphone from her hand. "This is exactly what Marin does," Mom said. "She takes pieces of people, cuts them apart, and rearranges them until they look cruel." Her voice came through clean and steady. She had spent most of her adult life speaking to rooms full of people, and even then, with Camera B fresh in everyone's mind, she tried to make control sound like concern. "She works with footage for a living," Patricia continued. "None of you know what was removed or altered." Murmurs moved through the tables. Mom turned toward me. "Tell them how long you have been planning this," she said. "Tell your husband what you turned your wedding into." Evan remained beside me, his shoulder touching mine. He did not reach for the microphone or answer on my behalf. I stood. The MC offered me a second microphone, but I shook my head and walked toward my mother instead. The room was quiet enough that I could speak without amplification until I reached the center of the floor. "The full Camera B tape was captured in sequence," I said. "The original file, equipment record, logging sheet, and signed witness statement are already with independent counsel and an archivist. Nothing you saw tonight is the only copy." Patricia's fingers tightened around the microphone. "You spent 22 years cutting me out," I said. "I only put the missing seconds back." Then I looked toward Maya. "Turn off the screen." The curtains closed across the blank surface. Mom opened her mouth again, but Grant reached the center aisle before she could speak. "I knew nothing about this wedding plan," Dad said. He aimed the words at the guests rather than at me. Patricia turned toward him. "You asked the videographers to keep recording. That was for protection." "Whose protection?" Talia demanded. My sister stepped between them, her face no longer arranged for an audience. "You gave her the tape," Talia said to Dad. "You told me it was destroyed." Grant glanced toward the tables. "I preserved evidence your mother wanted erased." "You hid it for 22 years, Talia replied. "I was trying to keep the family together." Patricia gave a short laugh that carried no amusement. "You kept it to use against me," she said. "You have been threatening me with that tape since the divorce started." Several relatives turned toward one another. Grant's shoulders stiffened. "This was your production. You operated the cameras. I followed your directions." "You told Marin how to hold the scissors," Talia said. Dad looked at her. "You continued telling the story after you knew the truth." The accusation struck its target. Talia stepped back, as though he had pushed her. Mom moved at once. "Talia was a frightened child," Patricia said. "She has spent her entire life carrying the damage Marin caused." "I was 25 when I saw the file," Talia replied. "You were still living with the effects. You told me the tape was misleading. Because raw footage can be misleading. You cut the dress." The words cracked through the room. Patricia looked toward the guests and changed direction. "My daughter has struggled with this memory for years," she said. "If she damaged Marin's gown today, she acted from pain. Grant and I had no knowledge of it." Talia stared at her. For the first time that evening, my sister seemed to forget the audience completely. "You said this was a family decision," she whispered. Mom kept her eyes on the crowd. "I never told you to damage anything. You told me where the hallway camera was." Patricia's mouth closed. You said if Marin reacted, the documentary would finally have its ending, Talia continued. You said Dad would make sure the cameras kept rolling. Grant stepped away from both of them. Do not include me in this. You wrote the camera instructions, Talia said. I documented what your mother planned. You planned it too. The three of them stood in the middle of my wedding reception, pulling pieces from the same story and throwing them at one another. For years, they had appeared strongest when they spoke with one voice. Without me beneath their blame, they could not agree on who should carry it. The venue manager approached with two security staff members. Both wore dark suits rather than uniforms, which kept the moment from looking like an arrest. I held out my hand for the microphone. Patricia did not release it. Marin, she said, lowering her voice, do not make a permanent decision because you are upset. You came here with a damaged dress, an unauthorized video, and a speech designed to provoke me. Talia made those choices. My sister made a sound behind her. Dad looked toward the exit again. I met my mother's eyes. You can decide which one of you to blame after you leave my wedding. The venue manager stepped beside Patricia. Mrs. Holloway, you and your family need to come with us, he said. This is my daughter's wedding. It is a private event, and the hosts have asked you to leave. Patricia looked around the room as though someone might object. Aunt Denise lowered her eyes to her folded napkin. One of Mom's former co-workers turned her chair away. The cousin, who had texted Evan about my supposed condition, stared at the black screen. No one stood. Grant moved first. He walked toward the exit without waiting for Patricia or Talia, using the same side aisle he had chosen when the video began. Mom followed more slowly. She held her shoulders straight and thanked the security staff as if they were escorting her to another engagement. Talia remained in the center of the floor. You destroyed my life, she said to me. The room heard her because Patricia had left the microphone in her hand. I could have answered. Several sentences came to me, each one sharp enough to satisfy the silence around us. None belonged at my wedding. I looked toward the venue manager. He placed one hand near Talia's elbow without touching her. Ma'am, we need to go. My sister let the microphone fall onto an empty chair. Then she followed our parents through the lobby. The glass doors closed behind them. For several seconds, nobody moved. Evan came to stand beside me. Do you want to end the reception? He asked. The question was quiet, meant only for me. I looked around the room. Dinner plates had gone cold. The first dance had not happened. My shortened dress still carried the slight pull where Claire had covered the empty loops. Friends watched me carefully, afraid that one wrong word might add to what had already occurred. No, I said, I want my first dance. Evan nodded once and signaled the bandleader. The musicians began again, softly at first. Chairs shifted away from the dance floor, while the MC collected the abandoned microphone. When Evan placed one hand against my back, I could still feel the tremor in my arms. Being believed had not erased the dressing room, the counseling office, or the kitchen window where Talia had watched me leave. Victory did not arrive as relief. It arrived as space. For the first time, nobody in the room required me to confess before I was allowed to celebrate. We danced. The caterers warmed what they could and replaced what they could not. Friends returned to the floor by the second song, though conversations stayed subdued for a while. An hour later, someone convinced the band to play an old Motown song, and the reception began to sound like a wedding again. Maya came downstairs only after the final guest had left. The booth recording and event footage are copied, she said. One set goes to your attorney in the morning. Nothing is online. Keep it that way. I will. She handed me the numbered drive, but did not ask whether I was happy. That was one reason I trusted her. 2 days later, Julia called while Evan and I were eating leftover wedding cake in our kitchen. She did not congratulate me. She did not say the documentary had been canceled. Your mother just sent us a statement blaming your sister for everything, Julia said. Your father sent a different one blaming your mother. I set down my fork. And Talia? I asked. Julia paused. Talia sent us the files neither of them wanted us to see. The files Talia sent to Julia did not make her innocent. They made it impossible for our parents to pretend the wedding plan had belonged to one frightened daughter acting alone. The folder contained text messages from Patricia explaining when Talia should enter the bridal room, which hallway camera covered the door, and how long she should wait before mentioning the damaged dress. Another message told her to use the phrase unresolved childhood pain if anyone questioned her afterward. Dad had sent instructions about the reception cameras. Keep rolling through any confrontation. Do not cut away if Marin becomes emotional. Talia also included the original family montage, the cue sheet she had sent Maya, and an email asking both parents to confirm that the plan was a family decision. Neither of them had answered directly. Julia stayed on the phone while I reviewed the documents. This confirms they were trying to create an ending for the film, she said. It confirms all three of them agreed to use my wedding. Yes. And Talia only sent it after Mom blamed her. Julia paused. Also, yes. I appreciated the answer. No speech about bravery. No attempt to turn my sister's self-preservation into redemption. What happens now? I asked. The project is suspended while our legal team verifies every source, Julia said. Suspended does not mean canceled yet. How long? A few weeks at minimum. She apologized for treating the old broadcast as a reliable account, but she did not ask me to trust her. After what had happened, professional distance was the most respectful thing she could offer. 2 weeks later, the production company terminated the documentary. The letter cited false source representations, undisclosed original footage, and evidence that the proposed wedding ending had been arranged rather than observed. Julia sent me a copy before the announcement became public. Patricia responded within an hour. She posted a statement saying the filmmakers had abandoned an important story because modern audiences could no longer tolerate complicated family memories. She described Camera B as a rough production tape whose meaning had been distorted by a professional editor with a personal grievance. She did not mention cutting the stitches. She did not mention the release she had tried to make me sign. She did not mention telling Talia how to damage my wedding dress. For 3 days, my mother's supporters repeated her statement. Some called me cruel. Others said every family remembered childhood differently, and that public humiliation was worse than anything Patricia might have done 22 years earlier. Then Julia's company confirmed that the documentary had been canceled because the family had concealed evidence and tried to manufacture a confrontation at the wedding. The tone changed. A school district removed Patricia from an upcoming parent conference. 2 churches canceled speaking dates. A regional children's media group placed her advisory position under review. Mom called me the night the group requested her resignation. I did what I thought would keep this family together, she said. I was standing in the kitchen, rinsing 2 dinner plates, while Evan dried them beside me. Water ran over my fingers and carried a thin line of soap toward the drain. You kept a story together, I replied. The family was the thing you cut apart. Marin, I made mistakes, but I also gave both of you opportunities. You gave Talia an audience and gave me a role. You have no idea what I sacrificed. I know exactly who you sacrificed. Her breathing changed. You sound pleased, Mom said. Is that what this has become? Are you happy now? I turned off the faucet. I'm done answering questions designed to make your consequences my responsibility. She tried to speak again, but I ended the call. 3 months after the wedding, the old television station completed its review. Ruth provided her signed statement, the original logging sheet, and the edit decision list. The independent archivist confirmed that Camera B had been captured in sequence and that the preserved file matched the digital record created during transfer. The station did not declare that every second of the old broadcast had been fabricated. Its correction was narrower and stronger because it said only what the evidence proved. The program had removed material relevant to determining who damaged the dress. The surviving production records showed that Patricia weakened the seam before Marin entered. The broadcast should not be used to conclude that Marin intentionally destroyed the garment. The correction appeared beside every accessible archive copy. My name remained attached to the program. But the accusation no longer stood alone. Patricia resigned from the Children's Media Advisory Group before they could vote to remove her. In her resignation letter, she said public pressure had made thoughtful service impossible. The group accepted the letter without praising her work. Dad attempted a different rescue. Grant offered to cooperate against Patricia in their divorce and in any civil claim connected to the footage. His attorney described him as the parent who had preserved the truth when everyone else wanted it destroyed. During his sworn declaration, that description collapsed. He admitted keeping Camera B for more than 2 decades. He admitted knowing that the broadcast removed Talia's defense of me. He admitted that he never showed the tape to the counselor, our relatives, the station, or me. Then my attorney played the audio. Put the scissors in her right hand, the other camera can't see them. Dad claimed he had been following Patricia's direction. The next clip contained his request for another response, because I had not sounded angry enough. Patricia's attorney used both recordings against him. Talia stopped taking his calls after learning that he had allowed her to spend 7 years believing the original tape was gone. Dad sent me a letter asking to meet privately. He wrote that he had finally chosen the truth and hoped we could speak as father and daughter rather than opposing parties. I answered with 4 sentences. Giving me evidence when it became useful to you does not erase the years you hid it. I will cooperate with factual questions through counsel. I will not provide a statement describing you as an innocent observer. Do not contact me about rebuilding our relationship. He wrote again. I returned the envelope unopened. Talia's consequences arrived more slowly. Her podcast platform paused new episodes while reviewing the red dress material. Several paid appearances disappeared from her calendar. A publisher withdrew interest in her book proposal because the central family story could no longer be presented as fact. Not everyone condemned her. Some listeners wrote that she had been manipulated as a child. Others argued that Patricia had created the original lie, and that Talia had merely repeated what she had been taught. I agreed with the first half. Talia had been 10 when our mother threatened to send me away. She had not created the room, the cameras, or the questions she was forced to answer. But she had been 25 when she watched Camera B. The adult who read the truth and chose the career mattered too. As part of resolving the false statements she still controlled, Talia recorded a correction for her podcast and posted the same message on her public page. There was no music behind it. No soft lighting. No story about healing. Marin did not cut my dress, she said. I saw the original footage 7 years ago, and I continued telling the story after I knew it was false. Her voice shook on the second sentence. She did not explain why. That had been one of my conditions. An explanation would have turned the correction into another stage for her pain. Talia came to the lyric the following week and waited outside my office until I agreed to speak with her in the lobby. She looked tired. Not ruined, not transformed, just tired. I did what you asked, she said. You corrected the statements you controlled. My podcast is gone. The film is gone. Nobody wants the book. I waited. Wasn't losing everything enough? She asked. You didn't lose everything, I replied. You lost the life that required me to be guilty. Her mouth tightened. Do you want me to suffer forever? No. Then what do you want from me? Nothing right now. That answer angered her more than a demand would have. Talia had expected a list of tasks, a punishment she could complete, or a date when I would announce that the debt had been paid. I would not become the next person controlling her life, and I would not give her forgiveness as proof that she had changed. If you ever tell the truth when it costs you something and nobody is watching, I said, that will belong to you. It will not obligate me. She left without saying goodbye. 6 months after the wedding, the legal dispute ended in a written settlement. No courtroom victory. No giant check. No public confession from Patricia. The current documentary project was permanently abandoned. None of the 3 could use my name, image, wedding footage, or the red dress story in new commercial material without written permission. Every licensed archive copy had to carry the station's correction. The original Camera B cassette and verified preservation files went to an independent archive under restricted access. My family paid part of my legal costs and a moderate settlement. It covered what I still owed my attorneys, replaced 2 aging restoration machines at work, and left enough that I did not have to think about the expense every time I opened my bank account. The agreement also prohibited them from describing the payment as forgiveness, reconciliation, or compensation for appearing in a family project. Patricia had tried to add language, allowing her to call the settlement a step toward healing. My attorney crossed it out. 8 months after the wedding, Maya sent us the completed reception video. The long version included everything. Talia taking the microphone, the laughter, Patricia walking toward the booth, Camera B appearing on the screen, my parents turning against each other while 200 guests watched. I viewed it once from beginning to end. Then I asked Maya to remove the entire confrontation from our main wedding film. She did not question me. The version Evan and I kept began with the theater lights coming on that morning. It showed Claire fastening the shortened dress, Evan waiting beneath the balcony stairs, and our friends filling the restored seats. It preserved the vows. It preserved the first dance. It preserved the moment the band played Motown and people finally stopped watching me to see whether I would break. The evidence file remained separate with the legal records. I did not destroy it, and I did not pretend the confrontation had never happened. I simply refused to let my parents occupy the center of another film about my life. A week later, I carried Camera B's original cassette into the independent archive. The archivist placed it inside a clean protective case while I completed the access instructions. Researchers could verify its existence and condition, but nobody could screen or license the private material without written approval. I wrote a new label in black archival ink: unedited original, restricted access. The archivist closed the storage box. I did not ask to watch the tape again. That evening, Evan and I locked the lyric after a small screening for a local preservation club. The audience had left paper cups beneath 3 seats, and someone had forgotten a scarf near the aisle. We cleaned the room, switched off the projection booth, and stood beneath the marquee while the last row of lights went dark behind us. "There's a diner still open on Carson," Evan said. "Pie? Only if they have apple. They always have apple." We walked to the car without cameras following us. My parents had spent half my life deciding which version of me the world was allowed to see. In the end, I did not need a better edit. I needed the right to walk out of the theater when the story was over. You may not be able to control what your family says about you, but you can control what evidence you keep, what boundaries you set, and when you walk away. When someone twists the past, do not waste years begging them to admit the truth. Save emails, keep records, speak to trustworthy people, and protect your space. Being calm does not mean accepting abuse, and forgiveness does not require giving anyone access to your life again. You can recognize that someone was once hurt while still holding them responsible for the harm they chose to cause as an adult. Most importantly, do not let revenge become your new identity. Use the truth to stop the damage, then return to the life you worked hard to build. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about courage, family betrayal, and the smart choices that help you reclaim your voice without losing yourself.